Welcome back to Creekview Acres. Today's craft is going to be a pillow cover for my coworker. And my coworker is into basketball and different sports. And I wanted to make her a sneaker style pillow cover. And I'm going to be using some recycled fabric from clothes that I have been given. So let's just see what I'm going to use to create this unique masterpiece for my coworker. First off, I asked for a pillow. She knows I'm going to do something, but she doesn't know what it is. So I was provided a pillow. It's 20 by 20. I had to decide what I was going to use as my outside fabric or the base fabric. So I have a zip-up fleece jacket that I'm going to try to figure out how to use to cover it, to make the pillow cover. I think I've got a plan in place, so I'll share that more as the project goes along. Then I found 3 fabrics that I thought looked nice together to use for the outsides of the sneaker, the tongue, and the toe. So I had to decide how I was going to draw my pattern to make this work. I decided to start with the outside part of the sneaker first. I measured the base of it and the height of that piece, and then I doubled it because I thought that would fit well for my pillow. Then I had to figure out what I was going to use for the middle piece, and I ended up using just a plain old square or large piece to go in there, and then the toe. So on the actual fabric that I selected, the purple is going to be the outsides of the sneaker, and I used the sleeve part for that. And here is my pattern that I used. I just laid it on the fabric, cut 2 of them so that I had opposing sides for it. Then I thought, well, I'll just use another sleeve for the tongue part, and I laid my 2 purple pieces on top of it, and then just cut my rectangle square shape large enough to fit that. Now granted, I did have the placket here, or where buttons, I did have that, and I had the cuff, so I just simply trimmed all of that off. And since that's going to be under, it really didn't matter that this button piece was here or that this part of the seam was here, because I was going to cut that out after I sew the purple pieces on top of it. So that was not a big deal in the long run. Then I had to decide what to do about the toe. So I had some white here, and I ended up using the opposing side of where the buttons were, and I just folded it, measured from the toe down to the shoe, and made sure it was wide enough for my image, and then rounded it at the toe. And I also put a little bit of a slant right there at the striped fabric that I'm going to be using. But all that will occur more. You'll hear more about that when I actually start sewing or see it in action. Then for the laces, I was going to use the white fabric, but once I cut some of the edges off of the shoulder of the sleeve, I thought that's pretty cool looking, and it has a curved image on it. So I decided to use this part as my laces. And then for the eyelet holes, I'm just using some of the white for that. This is what it's going to look like, what my pieces ended up looking like when I got them all cut out together. So I'll be taking it to the sewing machine shortly, and we'll start seeing what we can do with it. So I'm at my sewing machine now, and I'm going to sew the eyelets onto the purple fabric. The light is kind of bright there, but after I get finished, I'll show you what it looks like. And I'm going to use a straight stitch, and the setting is on a 1 here. So let's just see what that looks like. I'm going to drop my needle, and I'm going to use some purple thread just because it was there, and it's going to look fun maybe. I'm just going to kind of turn, drop the needle, turn some more. It's not going to be perfect. It's just going to look funky like. And I may go around it more than once. Doesn't have to look clean or anything. Alright, so I got a couple there. And let's just move over to the other eyelet. Got my thread all tied up. Oops, I forgot to measure where I wanted my eyelets also. That could be a problem. Okay, sewing on the eyelets got a little bit tricky for me. So I decided to lay my two top panels down. I'd already sewn on one eyelet. And I kind of positioned it where I thought it would go. But then I thought, well, let's just double check it. So I know that this red seam is like my center, or the red color is my center. So I put it on the 8 just for my mat's sake. And then I need a 2-inch gap on each side. So I positioned this at about the 7, this one about the 9. Then I even folded my lace in half, and then I position it over the red dot. So that one goes towards the center of the eyelet, and that one will go towards the center of the eyelet. I may raise it just a bit, and I think in the end I'm just simply going to hand stitch each of those through the with a thread into the eyelets. So I did the same thing with this one down here, only this time I folded my shoelace in half, found where I wanted to put it in the center of that red stripe, and then I positioned my other 2 eyelets. So I will pin those in place and take them to the sewing machine to get them in. I've already sewn in one of the eyelets, and my setting is on a straight stitch and about the 1. I probably could go a little bit lower. So that eyelet is positioned. I'm going to drop my needle into the fabric and just turn my needle, my knob, to stitch it in. And anytime I raise my presser foot, I make sure that my needle is still in the fabric. So we'll get all 4 of the eyelets sewn in. And then we'll figure out what goes next. And I think it will be sewing these 2 purple pieces to this stripe piece. Okay, now I have pinned the purple pieces to the stripe piece. I laid out my laces just to double check that they were going to fit. And once again, my red stripe is on the 8. I've moved these over to the 7 and the 9. So I've got my 2-inch spread, and now I'm going to sew my purple to the stripe. Time to sew the purple to the stripe. I kept my stitch at the straight stitch, but I did increase this to maybe 1 1/2, 1 3/4 the stitch length. So let's see what happens now. And I'm going to do it all the way down and go back so that there's 2 or 3 different stitches on it. And let's just do a second one or a third one. All right, now move over here to this one to do the second set of purple on the stripe. Alright, so now we've got the eyelets on and the 2 purple pieces on to the stripe, trimmed away the excess fabric from the stripe, and now we're ready to sew on the toe. Okay, so the toe has been pinned onto the striped fabric, so now it's just time to start sewing it together. So this is what we have. And now I've got, this is the inspiration picture. So now I've got to figure out how to fix my fleece jacket, make it look like a pillow cover, and then I will add the stitching around the outside edges. Maybe even go back in here again with different color thread, some white or something, and add the 2 stitches there also. And then add the laces. So let's just see what happens now. It got to a point to where I stopped videoing because I didn't know what I was doing. So through these photographs, I'm going to try to share with you as best as I can how I finished the pillow. This is the inside of the jacket. I cut the sleeve out. I seamed that sleeve and left the seam that was already in the jacket and cut the zipper out. Here is the shoe laying on the front side of the jacket before I've sewed it all in, just so you can see what it looks like. This is the back side of the jacket. I added the striped fabric because it's going to be a pillow cover, and I had to add 2 pieces onto each side of the jacket. Here's a close-up of the stitching on the front side of the jacket where I did go back and forth over it, and I added some detail stitching. Some more of the detail stitching at the toe of the shoe. The purple was the original color, and then the white or gray is extra. This is the shoe sewn onto the back of the jacket. This is the inside of the jacket showing the pockets or the areas that I had to add on for flipping. This shows the front side stitching on the inside of the jacket where the shoe is, so that you can see what I did there. The jacket is flipped, turned right side out, and you can see how it sits on the pillow top there. Another view of the outside of the jacket on the back side. It is not equal or centered. Close-up stitching or close-up shot of the stitching for the shoelaces, how I sewed those in also. And finally, the finished product. She loved the pillow, and I did too.